What's up, everybody? Welcome back. We are here with some more NFL DFS picks and lineup advice for tonight's single game showdown slate on DraftKings and FanDuel. Thursday Night Football, New Orleans Saints, Jacksonville Jaguars. Welcome. I'm Brian Jester, co-founder here at Occupy Fantasy. Single game $1 million winner. We'll go over the injuries that impact tonight's slate, and there are a few. We'll talk about low-risk lineup construction tips, and for once, it's actually a pretty decent low-risk night on at least one site. And we'll go over the strategies for the biggest contests on both FanDuel and DraftKings, how to get you to the top of those leaderboards that have $100,000 up for grabs on FanDuel, and yes, $1 million up for grabs on DraftKings. So let's get started, and let's talk about the injuries. And we'll start on Jacksonville's side. Obviously, the biggest injury we have to discuss is the potential availability of Trevor Lawrence. Went down late in last week's game against Indianapolis with that knee injury. Didn't practice on Monday in their estimation. They didn't have a full practice. Limited on Tuesday and Wednesday. Officially questionable on the injury report. He talked to reporters. He said he's expecting to play. There are conflicting reports this morning. Ian Rappaport says that Trevor Lawrence is likely to play. Adam Schefter just came out right before this video I started recording, and I'm recording this 10:30 a.m. Eastern on Thursday. Schefter said it could be a game time decision according to his source. We'll see. It sounds like he's going to play, and I'm not going to bore you with the details, but based on the procedural moves they made with their roster and signing the quarterback from the practice squad to the active roster as opposed to elevating him, most signs point to Lawrence playing based on their roster moves. So we're just going to proceed with this video as if Lawrence is playing. In low risk and high risk, I'll input some advice if Beathard starts, CJ Beathard, the backup quarterback starts, but we're mostly going to assume that Trevor Lawrence is going to play tonight. Also for Jacksonville, Zay Jones is out. Came back 2 weeks ago, missed last week. He's out again tonight. That means Jamal Agnew will be their wide receiver 3. Tim Jones will be their wide receiver 4. They also have Brandon Scherf. Their offensive lineman is questionable. I think he's going to suit up. He seems like he's good to go, but just monitor that as well. Now, on New Orleans side, first, let's start with their offensive line injuries. They have 2 offensive tackles out, plus a 3rd offensive lineman who likely would have filled in for either one of those guys. So 3 potential starting offensive linemen out tonight. That is not great. It's not great considering how Derek Carr has been playing so far this year. So that's a bit of a boost to the Jacksonville defense tonight if you're thinking about playing the defenses. Juwan Johnson, starting tight end, remains out for New Orleans. We saw Taysom Hill get a crazy workload last week. 8 targets, like by far the most targets he's ever had. Caught 7 of them for 49 yards. Still had a carry on the ground as well. If they're going to use him in this role where he's a pass catching heavy tight end, then he makes some more sense than he normally does at his elevated price. Typically, we're not looking to play Taysom in Showdown at a $6K price tag. Let's go over to hit the flex spot. Yeah, 6,200. Typically, with his handful of targets and maybe a couple of rushes, we wouldn't be looking to play him here. But he's a little bit more enticing after the role that he showed last week. And finally, we have Jamal Williams, who is on injured reserve. A report came out right before I started recording that he is likely to be activated from injured reserve and play tonight. Remember, he started the season as the starter with Kamara suspended, injured his hamstring pretty quickly, out a few weeks. He's expected to be back. Now, he is a little bit more expensive than Kendre Miller, at least on DraftKings, but we do expect the Williams to get some of the, or at least most of the ownership that Kendre was projecting for, making Kendre Miller just a reserve, large field only option as the likely running back 3 if Williams is active. All right, now let's talk about low-risk contests, and we'll start with DraftKings, where I do think it is surprisingly a good night where we can figure out a high-floor approach and make our opponents show that they know that they can build the right type of lineup. Typically, if you read our showdown guide, you know all about it. We try to lock up all the scoring, playing both running backs, playing both quarterbacks. The past seemingly forever amount of slates, we have either had stud receivers that were forced to decide between them and their quarterback. We have split backfields, or the pricing just doesn't work out. But tonight we have Kamara, who is going to lead the Saints in touches. We have Travis Etienne, who is clearly their lead running back. And then we have both quarterbacks, assuming Trevor Lawrence is good to go. So if we play Kamara, Etienne, Lawrence, Derek Carr, let's get one of them in the captain spot. Let's just do Kamara for now. That leaves us $2,900 per player. Typically, this isn't great. However, we have a pretty outstanding value in Jamal Agnew. He is $400 on DraftKings, and as the wide receiver 3, going to get a handful of targets. Just going to score a couple of points, likely to allow us to fit in these guys. So we put it Agnew. That leaves us $5,400 for the last spot. We could play the Saints defense. We could play kicker defense we could play groupie. We could play Jags defense. Or if you downgrade from Kamara, you could actually even upgrade to Evan Ingram. So this is the way to do it. These 5 guys, put the captain that you like the most, fill in the last spot. But it's actually a pretty straightforward low-risk night on DraftKings. Now, unfortunately, we can't say the same thing about FanDuel. FanDuel typically is a lot harder to build low-risk lineups. And for those of you that are new, uninitiated to how we define contests here at Occupy Fantasy, low-risk contests we describe as you just have to beat half the field to double your money, basically. You have to build low-risk lineups. You don't have to shoot for top 1% outcomes, 50-50s, double-ups, head-to-head, small field satellites, things like that. So if we try to fit the 4 core guys here, we actually can't do it. It leaves us with negative $500 in salary. You would have to get rid of at least 1, but probably 2, because if you just use 3, that leaves $67.50 per player. We can't do that. We know that historically that is not a profitable strategy in low-risk contests. So you have to decide between 2 of the 4, and maybe you lean against Lawrence because of the knee injury. Maybe that's one. Kamara's passing game role likely is the guy, and as the 3rd highest price guy is the guy you probably want to play the most of. Carr has been terrible. The receivers are a little underpriced. Either way, it's an avoid low-risk night on FanDuel. The only way we would play FanDuel low risk is if Beathard starts. Now, both sites were smart about this. They knew the potential injury and the potential absence of Trevor Lawrence, so they priced up CJ Beathard. In the past videos, we've talked about how sometimes backup quarterbacks are $5K on FanDuel. That is not the case for Jacksonville. Beathard is $10K. Either way, at $10K for a starting quarterback, he would become low-risk viable and one of the best low-risk plays on the slate on FanDuel. And then you can fit in probably 2 more of these guys. So that makes it a little more palatable if it does come down to that this afternoon. On DraftKings, Beathard is actually $8,600. So the typical backup quarterback here is $6K. He's not even that. He's $8,600. So he's $200 cheaper than Carr. So he just becomes a normal quarterback play at that point. Certainly cheaper than Lawrence, but only $1K cheaper. So not like we get this great discount if Beathard is forced to start. All right, let's transition to high-risk contests, leagues, GPPs, satellites. You have to beat a lot of people to get a lot of money. Exponential payouts. Got to take some shots here. So let's talk about some strategies, some ideas that I noticed while I was building lineups and preparing for this video. So it wouldn't be a showdown video without talking about how the field is going to construct their lineups. And it's a little interesting given the lower game total, but builds by the field will be Jacksonville heavy, especially on DraftKings. So if you've been a constant viewer of these videos, you know the deal. We flip the script. If the field is going to build Jacksonville captains with multiple Jacksonville players in the flex, 4-2 lineups, 5-1 lineups even, we build New Orleans heavy. We flip it. We play 4 New Orleans players, 5 New Orleans players. And it's a little tougher, but if Lawrence is ineffective, that's one way this works out. If Beathard is forced to come in mid-game, it's another way this works out. Or if Jacksonville scoring is just concentrated to Etienne or Ingram or one of their receivers. And New Orleans has guys that they throw to, 3 receivers that fit in. They have, obviously, the kicker in the defense, Kamara, Carr. So not out of the question that New Orleans heavy builds can get there tonight. It's not even that outrageous compared to some of these other slates where we're trying to fit in, 3 Giants or 3 Broncos, and we're just hoping and praying that they can get a couple of catches. So on that note, New Orleans actually has some receivers that are due for positive regression. If you subscribe to Occupy Fantasy, you know about our underperforming wide receivers. These are guys that have seen a lot of opportunity, but they haven't necessarily translated into actual fantasy points. Typically, if it's just one guy from a team, it's likely just some variance. However, the Saints have 3 underperforming wide receivers. Yes, all of Chris Olave and Michael Thomas and Rashid Shaheed are all underperforming. And when you see something like this, it typically means there's something wrong with the offense or the quarterback. That can certainly be the case. Carr has been playing pretty poorly, and that's why all these guys are underperforming. Olave, I've been playing this dude heavy for the past 3 weeks. Somehow cannot get in the end zone or have a big fantasy day. Michael Thomas hasn't scored since, I don't know, since Obama was president. And then Rashid actually did score a touchdown last week, but should have had another long one. Derek Carr underthrew him by about 15 yards. So all these guys should have had huge games in the past 3 weeks or so, which means because I've been playing them all heavily in classic contests, that means one of them will have a big game tonight in Showdown where everyone will be playing them. So here's the deal. These guys, the fact that they are underperforming allows you to build Derek Carr captain lineups, Derek Carr MVP lineups on FanDuel, and play multiple of these guys, and allows you to more easily build New Orleans heavy lineups. So and you can play all these guys at captain, right? So that's another option here. But just know that they are all underperforming. And if they had the big games that they should have had based on their opportunity, they would all be priced a little bit higher. So just keep that in mind as you are building tonight. Now, speaking of the Saints, there are some low-owned plays on their side that we like, and one is Taysom, who I mentioned earlier. $6,200 because of his price tag. He's not going to be that popular because he is Taysom and not some other random tight end. His ownership will be higher than if he was some random guy. But we don't think he'll get over 20% owned at that 6,200 mark. So if you're playing him, you're banking on that new role that he had last week with Juwan Johnson, who's been out for a couple of games now, but just a crazy role increase for Taysom last week. So if you're playing him, you're banking on that continuing on the short week at less than 20% total ownership, more than likely. The other one is Blake Grupe, who normally we don't get kickers under 20% in a low total game. But I think we're going to get it here because he is 5,200. We saw Brandon Aubrey in that Monday night game, who has been kicking out of his mind for Dallas, kicking a ton of field goals. But they actually priced him $5K on that showdown slate, one of the highest kicker prices we've seen. That's Justin Tucker territory. Grupe is even higher than that. Grupe is 5,200 tonight. And he's been kicking well also, right? I mean, look at all the field goal attempts, double-digit points in 2 of his 5 games. So Grupe at 5,200, because he is priced up and because we have the presence of Agnew and some of the studs are cheaper, he's going to be under 20% owned as well. So like playing Grupe tonight in the dome, lower total game, has shown that he can put up fantasy points. So like playing him as a low owned option as well. The defenses, we think the Saints, because they are 5,400, because the Jaguars are 3,800, both will probably be around that 20% mark. Wouldn't be surprised if it's one way or the other. But this is a game with New Orleans missing offensive linemen, with Trevor Lawrence being banged up, that we could see the defenses excel. So playing defenses in your lineup tonight heavily is probably another good option in all sizes, smaller field GPPs and larger field GPPs, especially since if there was no value, if there's no guy below 3K that was going to get a decent amount of run, the kickers and defense would have elevated ownership, as we've seen many times in the past. But that shouldn't be the case tonight with Agnew and with some of these other guys, Moreau and Jamal Williams, Kendra Miller, some of these other guys, Jimmy Graham, just taking a few percentage points here and there, and we end up with lower owned defenses than we probably should in this type of game environment. Finally, I'll give you a FanDuel specific strategy. Now, this does work for DraftKings too. Let's not get it twisted, right? Just that the ownership and the popularity of this type of build will be way more popular on DraftKings. But to me, this screams as the perfect type of night. Let's go over to FanDuel, where, yes, people will play Lawrence and Etienne and Kamara and Carr, and they will soak up a vast majority of the MVP ownership tonight. But to me, on a lower total game, when we have all these receivers that can catch multiple touchdowns or top 100 yards in a touchdown in a lower scoring game, be the optimal MVP, to me, it's the perfect night to play a handful of Olave, Ridley, Kirk, Thomas, Rashid Shaheed even, and mix and match those guys at MVP, all under 10%. Shaheed's going to be the lowest, obviously, as the perfect type of game, the perfect type of offenses that can succeed and outscore everyone else on the slate. Jack, who you've seen on these Monday videos, sometimes short slate winner, he's won and gotten really close to $1 million paydays and 200K paydays on FanDuel, playing the trashiest wide receiver MVPs you can think of. I have a feeling he'll be on this angle tonight as well. So to me, while you could play Lawrence or Etienne, Kamara, Carr, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think for larger field GPPs, like this Thursday night special, like the Rush, just playing equally or mixing in Olave, Ridley, Kirk, Thomas, Rashid Shaheed, and playing them all and leaving some salary, because in a game where those guys are optimal and the salary is low and the total is lower, we likely see the optimal lineup leave more salary than usual. So leave more than 1K on the table, play those wide receiver MVPs. That to me seems like a great approach tonight. And the same goes for DraftKings. It's just that those guys will be 2, 3, 4, 5% on FanDuel. Some of them will be upwards of 10, 12, 15% on DraftKings. So a big difference in ownership. But the salary remaining option, that strategy remains the same, because if those guys are optimal, it's a lower scoring game, you can leave 1,500, 2,000, 2,500 and feel okay about it in a slate in a game that should be pretty gross, I would think, based on these two quarterbacks and these two teams. So I think that's all we covered for the video. Now, if you like these videos and you want to see more, make sure you are subscribed to the channel. It is free to do here on YouTube. I say this every time. Obviously, it helps us out. Let's not play around here. Obviously, it helps us out if we get more subscribers. That's great for us, but it's also great for you. It's mutually beneficial. You get notified when we go live, upload new videos. Sometimes we go live. I think next Monday I'm actually going to go live, so you'll get notified when that's scheduled. Any other videos we put out for NFL or other sports. NBA starts next week, and we're actually God bless our NBA team because they are doing a pre-lock live Q&A before every single slate for like the next 6 months. So show your support, and if you play NBA DFS, make sure you subscribe because you'll get notified when they go live. Christ, every single day. And if you like the video, give us a thumbs up. If you don't like it, just ignore this request. But if you like it, let's get over 200 likes. We've been trying to do that the last couple of videos, and we've been succeeding. So give us a thumbs up, show your support, show that you like these videos. Any questions, comment on the video below. I will monitor the channel throughout the day. Happily, we'll get back to you. Chat with other viewers below. Give your opinions. Talk about some lineups. Drop the comment below the video. If you want more in-depth conversations, if you want to talk to the staff, you want to chat with other members of our OccupyFantasy.com community, join our Discord server, OccupyFantasy.com/Discord. That link is in the description below. And if you want even more, listen, we know a lot of you only are going to watch free content. We totally understand that. That's why we do these videos. We want to reach as many people as we can. But if you want that extra edge, you want to be the type of person who knows everything about a showdown slate or any slate before you play it, become a member of OccupyFantasy.com. Our daily plug for the Thursday night game will be out this afternoon. Ranks every player, FanDuel and DraftKings for specific contest types. It has lineup construction tips for specific contests for both FanDuel and DraftKings, and more slate notes that I can go into detail in this video. Complete roadmap for the slate. So make sure you go check that out. The link is also in the description below, shockingly. So, Brian from Occupy Fantasy, thank you for listening, and good luck in tonight's showdown slate.